Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Horror Appraisal. I'm Sam. With not here is Evan, and there's good reason for that. I saw 3 from Hell recently, and it was a good opportunity to see something that's only out for 3 nights. If you haven't seen it by tonight, sorry, because you're out of luck. It's no longer available. It will be coming out on Blu-ray on October 15th, though. So, if you're a Rob Zombie fan and you're curious about the film, that's how you're going to see it. This is coming to you from someone who is, I would consider myself to be, a Rob Zombie fan. There have been some things about his work that I haven't liked. For example, the Halloween remake movies 1 and 2. You all know how me and Evan both feel about those movies. So I won't get into that. However, House of a Thousand Corpses was good. Little too much supernatural element for me. Devil's Rejects I feel like was perfect. And then we come to 3 from Hell, and I'll talk about that in a second. Lords of Salem was really fantastic. That was a great entry. And 31, a lot of people didn't like that. They felt like it was just too much jittery camera shaking craziness. I actually really thought it was kind of a perfect blend of good steady shots and camera shakiness when it came time to kill someone. Also, the casting in that was really good. You had Richard Brake and you had Jeff Daniel Phillips, and they did really fantastic in that. They were kind of new to his work, and I thought they were great. And that, in addition to his normal fare. Now we come to 3 from Hell, and we come along, and we find that Baby Firefly, Sid Haig, and we've got Bill Moseley, which Sherry Moon Zombie's Baby Firefly, of course. We find that they've been, we thought they were fucking dead in the car because they got shot so many times. And then we come to the beginning of the movie, and it's not anything supernatural. It's nothing elaborate. They're just surviving. And so the beginning of the movie is really just kind of like a time lapse of news events that leads to their arrest, their trial, them being in prison. And then we get to, very slowly, we get to a moment where there's a prison break, there's an escape, and 3 people are on the loose again. And I will say the title 3 from Hell is misleading in that fact because... And you know what, I don't really care about the spoilers. At this point, you deserve to know that Sid Haig is in this movie for all of 50 seconds. So it's 3 from Hell with Richard Brake serving as number 3. So Richard Brake is the 3rd from Hell. Does he really deserve to be there? He's a good actor, but I feel like maybe his success in 31 launched him into a role. And, maybe Sid Haig wasn't quite filling up to this, and his health is a little bit iffy at times, and he even seems a little weak. When we see him in 3 from Hell, he seems very weak. His voice is strained, and as a fan of his, I do feel like that's kind of it for him as far as, doing heavy action stuff. Maybe he can do some drama and things, but I do feel like he was put in this in namesake only and really kind of resigned to just having him as advertisement. And I feel kind of bad. I feel really bad for him because he deserved better out of this role. He deserved better from the legacy of these movies. And he was Captain Spaulding, and he is one of the big draws for people from House of a Thousand Corpses. He was one of the reasons that people really came to love the series. He was this clown that people really kind of latched onto, and people dressed themselves as him. That being said, Sherry Moon Zombie and Bill Moseley did their parts, but I will say they were very different from their past selves in certain ways. Just not as I couldn't take them as seriously. Sherry Moon Zombie came across as being really just super unhinged the whole time. It wasn't that she was just... It wasn't her crazy old self. Like in her crazy old self, there was a calculated way that she went about things. She had an end game. In this movie, the group treated her like she was uncontrollable. They treated her like she was this animal that needed to be caged, and they didn't really trust her to go off by herself or anything like that. And I'm not sure if we missed something, but that's the way she was in this movie. She was kind of like an uncaged animal, and they didn't really seem to respect her at all. Bill Moseley was pretty vicious in this, true to form. He wasn't quite as bad as he was in Devil's Rejects. I feel like he was, his part was just done better. Not him as a person, as an actor, but I feel like his role was more inclusive in Devil's Rejects. And then Richard Brake, of course, he enters the team, and I feel like Richard Brake did pretty well, but he wasn't quite as sick and sadistic as he was in 31. So there you have it. With them as a team. The way this movie was filmed, if you hate Rob Zombie's shaky camera style, avoid this movie, because that's all it is. The entire thing is handheld. It's not smooth shots here and there. It's just pow, like handheld camera all the time. Even in a moment that's not really particularly crazy, it's just camera like is all over the place. And that I really didn't get. And that being said, there are some cameos and some people that did stand out in this movie that I thought were really memorable and pretty cool. It was really cool to see Clint Howard come in. He played a really memorable role, and Clint Howard. It took me a second. I was like, "That's Clint Howard." But even more so, the longer it took me to recognize, it took me longer to recognize the next person than it did with Clint Howard. Dee Wallace was in this movie, and Dee Wallace and her role, I was like, is that really, that's her, that's Dee Wallace. And I only really recognized her by her voice. She had black hair, it was trimmed short, she was a prison guard, and wow, she was utilized pretty well. I feel like she was the best utilized of anybody in this movie. Moving beyond that, Jeff Daniel Phillips was pretty good. He was the prison warden. Felt like he coming back from 31, we came to enjoy him as a character, and Rob Zombie brought him into this movie. Now, that being said, I urge you, if you're a Rob Zombie fan of any type, your curiosity needs to get the best of you. You probably should see this, just to satisfy whatever is going on in your head. Me, personally, I left the theater in silence until I got outside, and then I was like, what did you think? And then I was like, I kind of thought it wasn't great. I've never really said that much about a Rob Zombie film. The way it was filmed was super shaky, and that's just the style of the camera work. But it was also shot in such a lo-fi way. It was like super intentional to make this look way older than it was. Okay, so Sherry Moon Zombie's character comes out and says, I've been in prison 10 years. They were arrested in 77, 78, something like that. So here they are in 1987, 88. Why wasn't this thing filmed like the 80s? Okay, that's a really popular thing right now. But here we are, we have Rob Zombie shooting it like it's an 8mm Super 8 film. It was really, really grainy and gritty. And it went down from House of a Thousand Corpses and Devil's Rejects. Why would you do that? What are you hiding? Like, I appreciated it on one level. I thought that some of the attention to the focus and everything, it was okay on one level, but the rest, no. It didn't work. And then the music was not what you would typically expect from a Rob Zombie film. It wasn't in your face. It wasn't gritty. It was apologetic. It was soft in every aspect of it, and it didn't impact anything in it. And none of it was felt. I felt like coming off of films where music is such an integral part of his filmmaking, it just was an afterthought, and it was very soft. That could have been the theater, but it was a pretty nice theater, and I don't know, maybe it was intentional, part of that lo-fi thing that he did with the film too. Maybe he also intended the music to sound like it came out of a tin can, but it wasn't produced well. Another aspect of the film, there was a, and this is people. Some people are going to say I'm being too picky here, but there's this thing where a bunch of these Mexican guys in wrestler masks come out, and luchador masks, whatever they are, they come out in Mexico, and they have very modern rifles that were made by very modern rifle companies, such as 2010. But here we are in the late 80s, having a standoff in Mexico, and these guys have fully automatic AR-15 style weapons that have very modern sights and very much CG element. Like there's nothing practical about this movie. Knife wounds were CG, gunshot wounds were CG. There might have been some blood on some people at some point, maybe. But I feel like most of the blood in this movie was CG. I feel like I've done nothing but trash this film. I will say when we went into this, when we went into this film, it was there was a little bit of excitement from people, but I think that there was some trepidation, some anxiety about maybe he wasn't going to do well. And I think that when people left this, no one clapped for it. I think the audience that we had would have clapped for it. They were all, you looked around, everybody was horror fans. The expensive ticket on the expensive price on the ticket definitely ensured that nobody other than Rob Zombie fans would come to this movie. And when we left, everybody just kind of got up and walked out. There were no comments. It was completely silent, and it was one of depression, I felt like. And I feel bad about that because we came at such a high point with House of Thousand Corpses, and Devil's Rejects was probably, in my opinion, the perfect of the series. A lot of people think it's House of Thousand Corpses. That's fine. They're interchangeable in my opinion. But Three from Hell, it just did not feel like we had three people on a rampage, like the title of the movie says Three from Hell. Okay, so this should be the bloodiest shit we've ever seen. It didn't really happen. Like we saw copious amounts of tits and breast implants, and that was not really necessary. We didn't have, okay, so we had a party scene in Devil's Rejects, and there was that camaraderie we felt. But in this Three from Hell, there was some partying that went down, but they were very much apart. They were very much separated. You know, you began this movie on a note where people died in a car together because they had this connection. In this movie, nah, they were weak. They were very weak. It came across very weak, and I don't think that's their fault in any way. I think that is the script. So, sorry, Rob. I know you'll never see this video. If you do better next time. I'm Sam from the Horror Appraisal. I hope I didn't let you down too much. See ya.